I'm good. Causing trouble best I can.
Where are you currently based?
In your mind, clearly. I only exist as a construct of your imagination. No, I'm in San Diego, California. So it's about 7 o'clock at night here. I'm feeling good. I'm going to put my son to bed after this. Drinking a little hot cocoa.
Oh, that's nice. Just woken up from a slumber, ready for this talk.
Ready? Ready for me to energize you? This is good.
Perfectly ready.
This is a good thing first thing in the morning after a nap. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Matt, good morning. Sorry,
Hey
good
Neil,
evening.
how are you, man?
Hey, good.
We'll give people a few minutes to kind of relax and come in, and then we'll do some talking, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I know some people were excited that this is on Vowel, so it will be recorded. We are recording down there in the lower left-hand corner. You see a little recording button. We are recording, which is great because some of the American crew were like, this is very late. Can we get a recording? And the answer is yes, you can.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with Vowel before this. It's actually I wasn't familiar with Vowel before this. It's my first time using Vowel. Yeah, it seems pretty nice. It's anything apart from Zoom is right now.
You're like anything but Zoom.
Anything but Zoom is an upgrade. Yeah.
Well, I can show you the special features of Vowel while we give people a few minutes to drift in. So if you look in your lower right-hand corner, you'll notice we have a notes tab. Any shared notes that you take will be distributed to everybody else. When you take them, they're actually tagged in the video. So if someone clicks on the note, it will take them in the place in the video where it happened. So if you say, Matt said something cool here, then they can just click on that and it'll zoom to that place in the video. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll also notice there's a transcript button, and everything that we're saying is being transcribed so that you can search it. And, you know, if you're like, I remember Matt said something about M&Ms, well, you can search it and find where I said that. And then my favorite feature is the what I call shut up white guy meter. You'll notice in the upper left-hand corner is a percentage over here. I have been talking 76% of the time. That's not unusual because this is me giving a talk. So you would imagine when I'm giving a talk that I'm talking most of the time. But in a meeting, it's really useful for getting people to think about, hey, maybe, just maybe, I should shut up and let other people talk.
Yeah, I mean, did you have any inputs in designing the layout of this app? I believe you did.
I did. I know the founder and the team, and I give them feedback as we go. That percentage used to be hidden, and I was like, no, just make it visible all the time to everyone. That will make me happy. A subtle reminder. I keep trying to get them. I want it to blink when you're like way out of whack. So like, you know, if there's 10 people in a meeting and you're talking more than, let's call it 30% of the time or something, you know, it sort of blinks at you and is like, hey, just so you know, might be time to be quiet.
Take a break. Yeah.
All right, Monish, we still have some people drifting in. Do you want to call it and start, or do you want to give people a little more time?
We can give them one more minute.
1 more minute.
Yeah.
We're going to celebrate. Almost.
It's 4 a.m. here, where I am. So
it's 4 a.m.? Oh, my God.
No, it's 8:34 a.m.
Oh, 8:34 a.m. That's way less bad.
Yeah, we can round it up to 8:35 and then begin. How's that sound?
All right. Sounds fantastic to me. I see a few familiar faces of people I know as well. Lorraine Minister, who's a great behavioral scientist. And then I see the wonderful Brahendra, who is teaches, not only is has learned behavioral science, but is now teaching it to a bunch of students in India. And he and I were talking about that last week. He is a member of Frog. So if you don't know Brahendra, a good guy to know.
How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? Good to see you. Oh, and I get Lorraine's face back too. Always good to see you. Lorraine not only is a talented behavioral scientist, but also a talented instructional designer. And I'm trying to convince her to help structure some of the things that we teach so that I can stop teaching them so often. This is my goal in life. Working myself out of a job. Shooting for.
Yeah, Mahid's been there today. It's been great.
All right, Munish, you ready, buddy?
I'm good whenever you are ready, yeah?
All right, let's do it. So, hey, everybody. My name is Matt Wallaert. My pronouns are he, him. I am an applied behavioral scientist, a career that I've been doing for about 20 years, ever since I left academia. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about applied behavioral science, but specifically how we apply behavioral science internally to companies and sort of to talent and development and how we grow people through behavioral science. In order to do that, however, we've got to arrive at a shared definition of what behavioral science is. So when I talk about applied behavioral science, first of all, that applied part, I don't mean academic science. So I don't mean something that happens in a lab somewhere and I write a paper and then maybe I write a book about it and then you go and apply it in the world. That's not how applied science works. I also don't mean translational research, right? Where I read something in a lab and then apply it in the field. Instead, we mean in situ experimentation, right? So in your company, experimentation in order to reach a behavioral outcome. So that's applied behavioral, right? It's got to be behavior, right? Everything we do to change behavior. One of my favorite examples of this in the workplace is inclusivity. We often talk about, for example, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is an inclusive behavior, right? If we want people to do something in the world, I can't pop open Monish's brain and find the inclusivity part of it and poke it. It doesn't work like that, right? The only thing that I want is inclusive behavior. So we have to stay focused on that behavioral bit. And then science, right? Science, it's not that I love science. I do love science, but science is just miraculously effective. It is the best process that we as humans have for creating replicable outcomes, right? Getting to the place that we want to go over and over and over again. So applied, not the academic sense, but that actually we're going to do experimentation in the world. Behavioral, right? Applied behavior. It's going to be something observable that people are going to do. And then science, we're going to use the scientific method. Now, the easiest way that I have found to communicate the process that is applied behavioral science is to talk about science fiction. Now, Anil probably didn't wake up this morning and say, you know what I am? I'm an author of science fiction. But I want to argue that Anil is actually an author of science fiction. How do I know? Because he's here with us today, right? He got out of bed today because he wants to change something about the way the world is. That means he's definitionally living in the realm of the fictional, right? He wants something that isn't yet true, right? It's a fiction until he makes it true. So how does good science fiction start? Well, we have to articulate the world that we want. We call that in behavioral science behavioral strategy. Behavioral strategy is the process of articulating what it is that we want people to do in a really concrete way. We do that by writing a behavioral statement.
Sorry, Matt, I think you are on mute.
I put myself on mute instead of typing things. That happens. What I was saying was, so if we have behavioral strategy, the outcome of behavioral strategy is this very precise articulation that we have over here in the shared notes, which we call a behavioral statement. Who is going to be doing what and why when we're successful, right? Who's going to be doing what and why when we're successful? We can talk through this in a little bit, but this is sort of the outcome of strategy. We have to talk about what it is we want to be true before we can actually go get it. So much like my inclusive example from earlier, we can't just say, well, I want people to be more inclusive. What do you mean, right? There are a couple of exercises that I sometimes use with people when they struggle with this. One of them is the parallel universe. See, I told you I like science fiction. The parallel universe exercise. So Anil says to me, well, I want people to be more inclusive. And I say, what does that mean? He says, I don't know. I'm having trouble articulating it. So I say, I want you to imagine Lorraine and Bizarro Lorraine, right? We've seen this movie. There's always someone from some parallel universe, right? Usually they have a beard or something, right? And at some point in the movie, they shave off the beard and they get in a fight with the Lorraine from the original universe. And you have to figure out which one you're going to shoot. You only have one bullet. You don't want to shoot your Lorraine, right? try and think about, like, Lorraine comes from a universe where she is inclusive. Bizarro Lorraine comes from a universe where she's not inclusive. What are they physically, literally doing differently that would tell me which Lorraine was which, right? So you might say, for example, well, the Lorraine from the inclusive universe is talking a little less in meeting and making space for other people. Oh, that's a concrete behavior that I can design for. As a matter of fact, as Monish and I were talking about it, we designed for that in Val, right? We have this lovely little percentage talk meter up here in the left, which is a way of getting people to talk a little bit less or a little bit more if they're not talking enough, right? That's a thing that we built, an intervention that causes the behavior that we want, right? People talking in line with what they're doing, which is the inclusive behavior. So you could imagine writing a behavioral statement for that. You know, when employees at TalentSpotify want to be more inclusive, they'll talk roughly in proportion to how many people are in the meeting, as measured by people who are within 5% of their proportion for the meeting. That's a very concrete behavioral statement. It's a very precise articulation of who will be doing what and why. We can do this for lots of things, right? Internally. Hey, I want people to, a hot button topic right now is I want people to go back into the office, right? When employees, want to do their best work, they'll go to the office at least 3 days a week. That's a very precise articulation of what a return to office looks like. So we move from imprecise terms like return to office, which means different things to Lorraine than it does to me, than it does to Venkatesh or Saloni. That means different things to different people, to a really precise one. Hey, 3 days a week, you're going to be in the office for at least 5 hours. That's a really precise thing that we understand. Does that make sense? That's that behavioral strategy piece. Once we know that, then we need to start, in any good science fiction story, we need a backstory, right? We need to understand where we're coming from. So we know the world we want. We have to understand the world we have. We call that behavioral insights, right? The process of understanding the world that we have. But we're going to understand it in two really important concrete ways. One, remember, Anil has painted this picture of the world that he wants. Why would anyone want to live in that world? Why is it attractive? Why does it have gravity, right? Why does someone want to live in that world? We talk about those promoting pressures, things that make a behavior more likely, things that pull us towards that future, that likely future that we want. And then two, given that that future is attractive, given that Anil's world has gravity, why aren't we already there, right? If people want to live in that world, something must be stopping them from living in that world. We refer to those as inhibiting pressures, things that make it less likely that we'll do the thing. So if we stick with our example of talking about as much as you should in a meeting, well, why might I want to do that, right? Promoting pressures towards talking more are being sure that, I'm being heard, that I'm saying the things that actually matter to help us reach a decision. Maybe one of the things is being visible. Maybe I see it as being a good leader. What's stopping me from talking the right amount? Well, maybe I'm nervous and don't feel like people are going to value or honor what I say. Maybe I think I've already been talking too much. Maybe I'm just shy. There's lots of inhibiting pressures that push back against that. So that gets us to our third step, which is design. If we want to design something, we don't design to change behavior, because I don't know if you knew this about me, Manish, but I am a lying liar. Here's the thing. I can't change behavior directly, right? I can't pop open your brain and find the talk the right amount button and hit it. It doesn't work like that. I change behavior by changing pressures, either strengthening promoting pressures, making them more likely, or weakening inhibiting pressures, making them a little less likely, right? If I want people to do something less, and sometimes, by the way, that's true in the workplace, right? We want people to do things less. Well, then I need to strengthen those inhibiting pressures, but I also need to weaken the promoting pressures. I need to weaken the reasons that they're doing that in the first place. So I need to go through some process of understanding the world as it is. To do that, we're going to get a pressure map. I'm taking notes over here just to make it easy for everybody, right? We're going to generate a pressure map. A pressure map is literally just an up arrow and a down arrow that map out, hey, what are the existing set of pressures for that behavior? If I want people to talk about the right amount in a meeting, what's going on today with that behavior? Now, the natural next question is, but Matt, how do we figure that out? Well, we're going to talk to 5 really important kinds of people. Always, never, sometimes, started, stopped. So I don't know if you knew this about my friend Brahendra, but he always talks the right amount in a meeting. He never talks too much. He never talks too little. He always talks proportionally. He's an always. And then we've all met my friend Matt. He's a never. He always talks too much in meetings, right? He's never where he should be in a meeting. He always talks way too much, right? Then we have my friend Lorraine. Sometimes she speaks up in a meeting. Sometimes she's right about where she should be. But sometimes for some reason, she just goes a little quieter, right? Maybe it's around a certain person or around a certain time of day, right? Something is changing in her environment that's changing her behavior. And then we have two really special cases. Let's see, who haven't I picked on yet? Praveen didn't used to talk the right amount of meetings, but recently has started, right? He recently has started talking, a little more. He's contributing a little more. And I don't know if you knew this about Upasana, but they used to be talking, a little, they were talking the right amount, but they've recently stopped. Something changed and they've gone the wrong direction. So we're going to see, hey, what's going on with those pressures? Why does Matt talk so much in meetings? He's a never, right? What's going on with the difference in his pressures? Maybe Matt's boss really, really, really likes it when he talks. And so there's a very strong promoting pressure for Matt to talk a lot because his boss really seems to pay attention to it when he does, right? Maybe Lorraine only talks a lot in meetings where her boss is there. Oh, maybe that's a strong promoting pressure is your boss. You can start to see what the pressures are by observing people in the world. And by the way, we could do that qualitatively. So I could sit in meetings, I could follow Lorraine around, I could look at Matt's meeting recordings, but we can also do that quantitatively, right? So we can start to look at our people analytics data. We could say who's in meetings with who's talking how much, right? If you were using something like Vowel, all of this is available to you as analytics that you could be looking at. So when we generate a pressure map, right, those promoting and inhibiting pressures, we're going to do it from a quantitative angle and a qualitative angle, because I never believe anything unless it's been cross-validated. Once I do this, then I need to design something. So we've got strategy up here at the top. It's fun. I never get to use Vowel. I never get to use my own software for things. So this is great. I get to do strategy. We've got our insights phase here. Now we need to design something. So all we're going to do is start to manipulate those pressures as we understand them. So if, let's say, Lorraine is dramatically more likely to talk in a meeting if she thinks that her boss finds that important. Well, how could we strengthen that? Use your chat function. By the way, the chat is down there at the bottom. It looks like a little comment window. What is one way that we could make Lorraine feel like, hey, talking is going to be, your boss is going to see talking as a good thing? What could we do? How could we intervene? Typey those comments. If I can see your hands, that means you're not typing. Only two of you have your video on anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. No one wants to see me. I understand. It's early in the morning. Use your little comment button at the bottom. How are we going to do that? How are we going to make Lorraine feel like her boss is really paying attention to how much she's talking? Start asking questions. Madhav, I love that. 100%. So we could try an intervention where, we're going to strengthen that promoting pressure by, having the boss ask Lorraine lots of questions to draw her out, right? I love it. Lorraine says, boss repeats some of what Shimi says. So every time she says something, the boss says, oh yeah, Lorraine just said blank. That's a really good idea. That's another thing that we could do. So design is just taking these pressures that we have and then translating them into things that we could actually do to change those pressures. Now, we're not done. Just because we think we understand what's going on in the world and think we have a good idea, we don't know it's a good idea until we experiment, right? So our interventions, I am in the wrong place. There we go. So our interventions are aligned pressures, right? But then we need to do some sort of test, right? It wouldn't be science if we didn't run an experiment. Just because we think that having Lorraine's boss repeat what she says is going to work, we don't know until we try it. Tests are cheap and cheerful, easy ways of testing something before we put it into production, right? I always have 3 rules for tests. They can't take longer than a month. They can't cost more than $1,000, and you have to be able to do them entirely within your own team. They meant to be quick and easy things that you do, right? So if I want to send a letter, I can't get the mailroom to send it for me. I got to send it myself in this phase, right? Because I don't have any evidence that says, hey, mailroom, you should really be doing this, right? We don't want to ask other people to deploy resources until we have evidence that what we're going to do is going to work. All right. I have been talking for like 15 minutes straight, which is way too long. You can see 94% way too much, although it is a talk by me. Let's do an exercise. And I will do this by we're going to do this democratization style, democracy style. Do you want to spend 10 minutes? We're going to spend 10, 15 minutes on writing a behavioral statement. So the strategy part, or do you want to spend it on insights, that pressure mapping part? And use your little chat function there. It's comment button at the bottom to tell me which one you would rather do. And if no one says anything, then I'm going to go insights. So Anil says insights. I got 1 vote for insights. Now no one wants to go against Anil. That's the boss. Gotta watch out for Anil. Lorraine says insights too. Monish says, but we can't say both. We don't have time to do both, man. I can't be doing both. All right, let's do insights. So remember we talked about promoting pressures and inhibiting pressures. Let's do a trivial. We're going to do 2 examples. We're going to do a trivial example, and then we're going to do a workplace example. Let's do a trivial example first. Why do we eat M&Ms? That's not a rhetorical question. Why do we eat M&Ms? Use your little comment feature. Why do we eat M&Ms? Dun, 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 dun. I like, Brenda, you were like the only vote for strategy. Yeah, sugar, they taste good. Yeah, Lorraine, you're 100% right. M&Ms taste good, right? Taste is a powerful promoting pressures for M&Ms. M&Ms knows this. This is why they've released over 30 flavors of M&Ms at this point. Yeah, for those that don't know, there's the local version maybe called Gems. There's lots of different candy versions. We call them M&Ms in the US. They're Smarties in the UK, for example. So why do we eat them? Taste is absolutely one. Lorraine's right. That's why we've released all these flavors, even though we know the peanut butter M&M is the pinnacle. Saloni, I agree. They're fun to eat, right? There's actually a fun aspect to M&Ms. I did this talk once and someone said, oh, you can throw them at people. And I was like, what? Like, I have visions of him like in the office, just winging M&Ms at people. Brahendra, this was at Frog, by the way. So I had visions of this designer at Frog, just like chucking M&Ms at people. No. He said, Lorraine and she can open her mouth and go, and I can like throw an M&M in her mouth and she can throw M&Ms in my mouth and we can like play a little game with it. So Saloni, I think you're absolutely right. There's something inherently kind of fun about M&Ms, right? We can, you can play little games with them. You can, use them like little footballs. You can flick them. Like they're fun, right? Can't do that with a Snickers bar. You can't I can't say, Monish, open your mouth and then throw a Snickers bar in. Like that doesn't work, right? I can't like play little fun games or, little checkers or chess like with the Snickers bar. That doesn't work, right? So yeah, I think they're fun. I think that's a powerful one. Colorful. Karthik Kupsana, I think you're both right. Absolutely, they're colorful. Color really matters. And this is why engineers sometimes struggle at behavioral science. Because engineers will tell you, no, it doesn't. Color doesn't matter, right? Color is a relevant characteristic of M&Ms. But it matters. And I know it matters because I can do experiments that show that. It is true that if I give Lorraine just one color of M&M, she actually eats fewer M&Ms than if I give her the whole rainbow of colors, right? We're all logical adults here. I see you. Most of you are logical adults. I have my doubts about Monish sometimes, but the rest of you, logical adults. You all have a favorite color, right? Why? They're not Skittles. It's not like they taste different, right? But we all have our favorite color. I like the brown ones because they look like chocolate, right? Like, I don't know, I'm eating chocolate. They look like chocolate. It's very congruent in my mind. My son likes the green ones. I don't know why, but he does. Right? He'll dump out the whole bag and like sort the green ones out and then he'll eat them at the end because like they're the best. Why they're the best? I have no idea, but he believes it, right? Color is a really powerful promoting pressure. And this is really important. Behavioral science is not about logic, right? It's not about what should change people's behavior, right? In a perfect world, let's go back to our example of inclusion. In a perfect world, everybody would be inclusive because being inclusive is good and it's a wonderful thing and it makes you feel good and everybody would do it, right? But we don't live in a logical world. We live in a highly illogical world, right? It doesn't matter that color doesn't change the taste. It does change our behavior, and therefore we have to take it into account, right? If it works, we have to pay attention to it. Whether or not we think it should work, it does work. And so that matters, right? All right. So we got color, taste, all these things. Yeah, Palashi, I really like this one. It's small. It doesn't make you feel like you've eaten so many calories. What I'm going to say, however, is that's not a promoting pressure, right? These are buckyballs. They're little small rare earth magnets. They're quite small. Should I eat these? Oh, thank you, Manish, for saying no. Because, by the way, like, eating these is a really bad idea. If you eat them, they like go into your gut and then they attract to each other and then your gut gets pinched and you die. So don't eat small rare earth magnets. Small is not a reason to eat M&Ms. It's the removal of a reason not to eat every M&Ms, right? So I think size really matters here, but I actually think it's an inhibiting pressure. Akachana, I really like that one. Everyone eats them, so you don't want to feel left out. Social pressure, 100%. Social pressure is a really important promoting pressure. Everybody's doing it. And so now I feel like I have to do it, right? But Madhav, absolutely. Feel good after eating. Yeah, we feel good for a couple of reasons. One, because sugar is a psychoactive substance, right? So our brain goes, wee. Chocolate is also a psychoactive substance, so it goes, wee, right? And there's another reason we feel good after eating, because we no longer feel hungry. Hunger is a powerful promoting pressure. You know who knows this? Snickers. Think about Snickers. Snickers has never once said, Snickers, we taste better than M&Ms. They don't campaign on taste. What do they campaign on? Peanuts for power, Snickers, it satisfies, right? They campaign on the idea that it satisfies hunger. It satisfies this promoting pressure that is hunger. They actually literally go on satiety, right? So I think that's a really important one for sure. Kartik, you said another one that I really like, which is they're easy to share. Absolutely, right? This is kind of related to Akachano's one. So when you sort of said everyone eats this, so you don't want to feel left out, right? There's a social pressure. You also can share them, right? Lorraine can stick out her hands and I can dump some from the bag. I can't do that with Snickers bar. I'm not like breaking the bar in half and being like, here you go, Lorraine. Do you want my like goopy half of a Snickers bar that I had my hands on and stuff? Like, no, it's terrible, right? Like I could just dump them out into your hands and I could do this infinitely, right? That's why M&M's produces a shareable size pack, right? A bigger pack that you can share with more people. We all know you're eating them all yourself anyway. It's just a bigger pack, but in your mind, you could share them out. So yeah, I absolutely think that's a really good one, Karthik. So I think there's lots of reasons, right? Lots of reasons that we eat M&Ms. Here's the thing. None of you are eating M&Ms right now. Why not? Why not? Well, remember, there's promoting pressures, there's also inhibiting pressures. What's pushing back, right? So this is, I think, no, it wasn't Madhav. So Palashi, when you talked about the size, I think that minimizes the pushback. One of the reasons we don't eat M&Ms or we don't eat candy is because it doesn't feel like it's very good for us, right? There's a reason you can only see me from here up because everything here down is a disaster, right? I have a 7-year-old. I live on like the leftover chicken nuggets of 7-year-olds, right? So like this is my diet. You know, physical dishealth is a really strong inhibiting pressure for eating too much candy. Absolutely, right? So that's definitely an inhibiting pressure. Why else aren't we eating M&Ms? Why else aren't we eating M&Ms? Use chat function.
Because we can't find them nearby.
Yeah, maybe they're not available to you 100%, right? And this is real, Bahendra, this is really important, right? Because imagine I was magical and I could just snap my fingers and there was a bowl of M&Ms in front of you right now. At least some of you would be eating them, right? At least some of you would be eating them. Now, why is this magic? I didn't change the promoting pressures at all. They're no more delicious, no more beautiful, no more, culturally sent, peer pressured, right? None of those things are true. I just made them slightly more available, right? Slightly more available. And that changed your pressure. We have this systematic bias, right? This systematic bias. And let's think about this from a talent perspective, because we will all recognize this. When we want people to do something more, what do we typically do? Well, we talk about rewards. I'm going to pay them. I'll have a competition. I'll give them attention, right? These are all promoting pressures. And when I don't want people to do something less, hey, I don't want people to leak our new product. What will I do? Well, I'll punish them, right? They do something I don't like, I'll punish them. So I'm going to reward things I do like, and I'll punish things I don't like. This is very typical mindset. But in reality, that's missing out on half the equation, right? If I want someone to do something more, yes, rewarding them is one potential way I can strengthen those promoting pressures. But to Prahendra's point, I can also just weaken the inhibiting pressures. I can make it, easier to do, right? Most people will do the right thing if it is the easy thing. If you make the easy thing the right thing, everybody will do it, right? Because we're fundamentally cognitive misers, right? We don't want to spend energy that we don't have to spend, and vice versa, right? When we want people to stop doing something, sure, we can make it harder to do. We can also stop the reason they're doing it in the first place. If you don't want people to use their personal computers, you should figure out why they're using their personal computers. Maybe it's because their work computers aren't powerful enough, or they can't install the things that they want, or they can't control the visuals, or any number of other settings that you might have locked down. It's that promoting pressure, understanding why people are doing it in the first place, that matters, right? Upasana, I love, money is absolutely an inhibiting pressure for M&Ms, right? They're not free. We have to pay for them for sure, right? And, Karthik, you said, hey, people they lack the promoting pressure. They're not hungry in the first place. All of those are really valid things to change behavior. So now think about this sort of trivial thing that we did around M&Ms, and think about, imagine this as it relates to talent, right? What is one thing you could snap your fingers and you could get everybody at work to do something differently? What would you do? What would you do? If you could get everybody at work to do something differently, this is your chance. It doesn't have to be good for the business, by the way. This could just be something that matters to you. What is one thing that you would get all of your colleagues to do, right? Smile. Oh, Brahendra, I like that one, right? In a workplace that I want to be in, people are smiling more often, right? They're feeling happier. I like that one. That's a great one.
They are looking for in the long term as well as the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go back to our behavioral statement here, right? Which I can short code in there. There we go. Okay. So an OKR, right? An objective and key result, for those that don't know, right? The objective is that descriptive version of what I want. The key result is how I'm going to measure that. You'll notice both of those are present in a behavioral statement, right? The behavior is the objective that I want. The data variable at the end, as measured by, is the key result, right? So we try and fold these into behavioral statements. Good behavioral statements are incredibly important for a couple of reasons. First, they allow for accountability, right? By forcing to say, hey, here's the observable behavior and how we're going to measure it, I can then allow you to be accountable for something. So let's say, let's take Uber for a second. Let's say we're going to write some behavioral statements at Uber, right? Munish, I don't know if you knew this, but you've been promoted to the CEO of Uber. Congratulations. So you might write an OKR, a behavioral statement, that was something like, when people want to go somewhere, they will take an Uber, right? That's the macro level thing I want you to do. But you have a whole team underneath you, right? So you can imagine waterfalling these down a little bit. Anil is your head of marketing. So you say, Anil, your job is to get people to download the app. When people want to go somewhere, they will download the Uber app. You don't have to worry about rides. You don't have to worry about anything else. Your job is downloads, right? And Lorraine's your new head of product. Lorraine, you don't have to worry about downloads. You just have to get people to order rides. That's your job, right? You own the product, you own the app, so get people to order rides. And then you have Brahendra, who is your new head of rider experience. Brahendra, you don't have to get people to download it, and you don't have to get people to order rides, but once they get in the car, you got to make sure they have a great experience and they stay in the car. So your job is the behavior that is completing the ride. And then maybe Saloni is your new head of payments. And you say, Saloni, you don't have to worry about any of that. You just have to worry about making sure people pay. When they take a ride, they pay, and that payment is like successfully, sort of charged to a card that works. So one of the advantages of sort of nesting behavioral statements or OKRs is that it creates zones of accountability where I can say, hey, Anil, you only have to worry about this thing. Lorraine, you only have to worry about this thing. And then at the level above, you're orchestrating across those. Why is this so important? Because it allows for autonomy. The reason that people do work is to feel autonomous. They want to be able to do things in the way that they want to do them, right? There's this quote I love from Teddy Roosevelt, which is far and away the best prize that life has to offer, is the chance to work hard at work worth doing, right? It is inherently and internally rewarding, intrinsically rewarding to do good work at something that you believe in, right? In order for you to do good work, to feel good about it, you have to have some freedom to do it the way you want to do it. So by creating these OKRs or behavioral statements, these zones of accountability, you then can have a zone of autonomy at whatever level is appropriate for you. So I know we said Anil was the CMO. Matt is the summer intern on the marketing team. So Anil can say to Matt, your job is to get young women in Bangalore to download the app, right? He can take this big autonomy and make it a smaller autonomy that I can then own, right? And go after in my own way. So what changes is not that we have an accountability, but that everybody has a different sized accountability based on where they are in the organization. And importantly, they're all connected. As the summer intern, I know how getting young women in Bangalore to download the app is going to lever up to Anil's behavioral statement, which is getting people in general to download the app, which is going to lever up to Monish's statement, which is getting people in general to take Uber rides, right? I can see that clear chain of connectedness. And if Monish, this is the place I see things break the most often. Lots of people write OKRs that don't clearly lever up to each other. So it isn't clear how they're orchestrated. It isn't clear why one leads to another, right? What we want is that nice sort of waterfall style where, hey, I know what the company cares about, getting people to take Uber rides. I know where my division cares about, getting people to download the app. And I know what my part of that is, right? So it's that clear nesting that I think that a lot of companies miss out when they do OKRs, and that behavioral statements can really help people focus on. The other thing I see in OKRs sometimes is non-behavioral things, right? I have this problem all the time where, I consult, and so companies come to me and they're like, Brahender comes to me and he says, Matt, I want you to get people to love the product. I don't know what love is, but I want you to show me, like, what do you mean? Do you mean like the product, use the product, recommend the product, buy the product, write about it online, review it? I don't know. Like, what do you want from me? Right? Love can mean a lot of different things. So I see a lot of OKRs that use really vague words that could mean kind of anything. Hey, my OKR is to get people to love the product. No, it's not. It's to get people some behavioral observable thing that you're coding as love. Tell me what that behavioral observable thing is, right? Because then when we get to the end of the road, we'll be a lot more aligned, right? You are setting your employees up for failure. If you do things like say, hey, you got to get people to love the product. Great. They spent 6 months on it. They come to review. Lorraine's feeling great. She's like, I got everybody to love the thing, except her definition of love and my definition of love weren't the same. So now she comes to me to get her review, and I say, you did a terrible job. You did none of the you didn't accomplish what I wanted you to accomplish. She says, what do you mean? I got people to love it, right? But because her definition of love and my definition of love weren't the same, I'm not holding her accountable to the same thing she thinks she's being held accountable to, right? And even if we're just slightly off, what happens to something that's slightly off over time? It drifts, right? So the longer we go along using vague words like love, the farther and farther and farther apart Lorraine and I are going to get. And so the sooner that we resolve that and have something that we can written down and come back to, the better off we're going to be. And so I think OKRs are really important for employee happiness because they help people understand, hey, what am I being held accountable for? And where do I have autonomy around that?
Yeah, that really makes sense. Thanks, Matt. I think someone raised their hand. I'm okay with if someone wants to ask like a follow-up question. I think it was Karthik. I'm not sure. That's all right.
He left and came back again. If you have a question, put your hand up. Don't worry. There's a little hand raise icon there, and we'll get to you. In the meantime, Monish, ask your. I know you had another question.
Yeah. So, of course, different aspects to OKR as well. So we see people have task management under like OKRs where they can, as you said, narrow down or sort of classify objectives into these smaller goals that they can set through tasks and subtasks. And that ultimately also links to productivity, which is key for organizations. So I wanted to get your opinion on how do you think a behavioral scientist can add to setting up these tasks and then ultimately increasing productivity and engagement. So for example, if there is an platform that organizations are using for their business execution and setting task management rewards and features, how do you get to them to engage with the platform first, and then of course also keep a track of improving productivity by completing those tasks and getting on track?
Yeah, I think there's two really important things here. The first one is about size. So one of the questions I often get is like, what is the right level of OKR to take on or behavioral statement to take on? And so what I always tell people is you want to be as ambitious as you can be and still accomplish it, right? And it's still clearly within your zone of autonomy, right? And not in someone else's zone of autonomy, right? They need to be exclusive so that we're not trying to claim the same territory, right? In terms of like what success means or with different ideas. So in general, we want them to be as large as you can, right? But still reasonably accomplishable within your accountability. So you don't want to take on accountabilities for stuff that you don't control, right? So if you take on something that, let's say Lorraine was my head of product and, she took on the accountability, it was getting people to download the app. Well, nothing she can do in the product will change the downloading of the app, right? Because everything that she has happens after the app gets downloaded, right? So she's taking on an accountability that she can't possibly accomplish because she doesn't own those levers, right? So that's one mistake. The other thing that I see happen, Manish, that I think is really important is you want to be really careful not to write process OKRs or process metrics, meaning here is what I'm going to do. You want to say what is going to be true after I've done something, right? But we don't want to say what you're going to do because you shouldn't know what you're going to do yet, right? Because you still need to experiment. So I often, you can use sort of this like, when you have a process metric down here, process 100 applications per hour, right? That's a process metric, right? It's what I'm going to do. And so then you can apply that against lots of different objectives, right? But that's not what we want. What we want to say is, hey, here's an objective that I want to get to, right? I want customers to feel like their things are processed in a timely way. So, when people, want to apply for something, their applications will be processed in a timely way as measured by percentage of people who say that it was processed in a way that felt acceptable to them. Well, maybe 100 an hour is a way to do that, but maybe a thing is just, hey, I'm going to email people and tell them how long they're going to have to wait. And so I reduce the ambiguity of time, right? And then I can do 10 per hour if the people are still going to feel respected and feel good. So we always want to pivot from the top, not from the bottom. And so when we write process metrics, we're really off in the wrong direction. So we always want to see those outcome metrics when you write OKRs. That's a key tenet of behavioral science is making sure that we're speaking about behavioral outcomes, what people will physically, literally do because of the work we did, not, well, I'm going to do this work, right? Doing the work doesn't count, right? Only the outcome counts. And I believe this very clearly. I used to tell my team, I don't care if you work an hour a week or 100 hours a week. I care about the outcome of that work, right? How you do that work is up to you.
Yeah, the other question on the different chain of thought was about the rewards and recognition that you spoke about earlier in the insights bit, and I wanted
and I could see Upasona has a related question here. Like, what is your opinion of gamification of tasks and OKRs, badges, points, competitions, etc.? If you look at the original work on gamification, right? Jane McGonigal, people have really misunderstood what she said. What she was saying is that there are things about games that are really fun and intrinsically sort of motivating. And the world that we've constructed is kind of broken and often extrinsically motivating, right? People then took that and said, well, I should use things that are present in games like points and badges, and I should make them true in the world. Here's the thing I would say. I already told you, good work is self-motivating, right? Doing meaningful work that makes me feel powerful and autonomous and accountable is self-motivating. I don't need to add anything to that, generally speaking, right, in order to make it more sort of attractive. What I do need to do is get out of the way, right? I need to remove those inhibiting pressures. So the reason that people don't do their OKRs is generally not because of promoting pressures, right? It's because of inhibiting pressures. It's hard to get done, right? Now, it might be because of promoting pressures, but that's not fixed. When it's because of promoting pressures, it's not fixed by badges or points. So let me give you the following example. Let's say we write an OKR, and I keep picking my friend Lorraine because she's here. We wrote an OKR, and Lorraine's behavioral statement is that she's going to get people to talk less in meetings, right? That's what's been handed down to her, is like, get people to talk less in meetings, or get white dudes to talk less in meetings. That's what's been handed to her. If she's not involved in that creation process, if she doesn't understand how that levers up, you're adding points and badges to try and fix the problem that she doesn't think that's worth doing in the first place, right? You can't just add a bunch of external promoting pressures and expect that to take the place of intrinsic promoting pressures, things that are core to the thing. So that time that you spent adding gamification, badges, points, creating competition, is better spent saying, Lorraine, here's why that's important. Here's why it levers up to your boss's Matt's thing that he thinks is important. And here's how it's important to Monish, who's the head of the company, right? So helping people understand how what they're doing is important is a much better promoting pressure than badges or points or creating competitions, right? Badges or points, when you find yourself tempted to put in badges, points, or creating competitions, you are often trying to fix a problem that is much more deep, which is that people don't understand why they're being asked to do what they're being asked to do, or why their accountabilities are their accountabilities. Does that make sense? So I think it's a great question, Upasana. Make things fun? Sure, absolutely. I think that there are lots of ways to make things fun, and sometimes adding competition is a way to make things fun. Fun is a powerful promoting pressure, but I think meaning is a better promoting pressure and will almost always beat fun. Meaning beats fun pretty much all the time in everything, right? Kids are a great example. We have kids because they're meaningful. They are sometimes fun, but there's lots of other better ways to have fun than kids, right? There are a lot, how can we utilize self-determination theory in this process? Okay. So it's a great question. Okay, John, I'm going to try and answer it as best I can without getting too much into what the theory is, because that will take the remainder of the time. I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction. Let's look at when OKRs fail, right? Or when people fail to reach their accountabilities, because that will happen to all of us. At some point or another, you won't make it, right? And so that can be very demotivating to not meet the accountability that you set out for yourself. It is really important that we help people recognize that their accountabilities are temporal, right? Meaning if they miss them once, not forever, right? They have the power to change them, right? That they're local and not universal. Just because they failed at a thing doesn't mean that they'll fail at everything, right? You don't want to overgeneralize that failure of accountability, right? And 3, that it's situational, not internal. It's not that Matt missed his accountability because he's an idiot. Matt missed his accountability because he's not getting enough sleep and he had some life stressors at home, right? That made it difficult for him to do that. All 3 of those are really important because they focus on the fact that that is changeable, right? You don't want people to walk away from an OKR feeling like, well, I can't do anything about it. I can't make it better. Of course you can, right? Of course you can. But that requires them understanding that it's not about them as a person. It's a situational thing that occurred, and you can change that situation. It's one of the reasons I actually love teaching everybody at a company behavioral science, not just managers and not just product people, but everybody, because it implies that given pressure changes, all of us could change our own behavior, right? That, hey, if I didn't meet my accountability, well, I can strengthen those promoting pressures. I can make sure I understand why it's important. I can make sure I'm reminding myself of why it's important. And I can weaken inhibiting pressures. I can make sure that I, carve out time to do it. And I put that on my calendar ahead of time. And I do all these things to make it easier to do, right? I can get an accountability. I can get my friend Monish. I'm going to help you with your OKR. You're going to help me with my OKR. And we're going to stay on track together, right? Accountability buddies. it helps people understand that those things are changeable. So I think when we're looking at like, how do you actually use something like self-determination theory to sort of get people into the flow of how they have accountabilities, I think the really key part is helping them understand that they have control of or they can influence an environment that makes their behavior more or less likely. And that feeling of control and change and power is really important. And often for a lot of people is lacking at work, right? A tremendous number of workers do not feel like they have control of their own environment. And one of the things that we learn about humans is we really like to feel that we have control. It's a really important thing for us. Our mental health is to feel like, hey, we can influence the outcome of things. So when you start putting people in a position where they feel hopeless, right? When they start saying like, nothing I can do will change this situation, that's not where you're going to get the best work out of people. So I think that's a really key when you're setting sort of your OKRs and how you bring stuff through. Great question. I think we have time for maybe one more, if people have one more. Otherwise, I know, Manish, you had others that you had as well. Last call for alcohol. Who's got a question? Nobody. Okay, Manish, the floor is yours. Do you want to talk a little bit about, do you want to spend the last 2 minutes talking about TalentSpotify? Brought to you by our sponsors, TalentSpotify. How do you want to spend the last 3 minutes? I know you also had some other questions.
Yeah, I would like that actually. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. To be honest, I'd like to sort of ask you stuff about TalentSpotify rather than like speaking about TalentSpotify. So some of the things, the main thing that we are doing is, of course, combining AI tech with behavioral science, and that is part of the product. So the other thing I wanted to ask is, of course, to get more acceptance right around this to clients and to people. And I want to know what are the common misconceptions that people or clients might have, that this might not work in their favor because, hey, we are running successfully and we are getting the productivity for our company. And so what is the sort of intrinsic motivation here or reward here for us to use something like this, which again most of us haven't heard of? Are there any like cases that you've seen or any new insights that you can share?
Yeah, the nice thing about a process like this is it makes you feel it's like an exoskeleton in a sci-fi movie, right? Like, at some points you always get in this robot and that lets you like flip over cars and punch through walls and things. Behavioral science can feel that way too, right? The first time you do a successful project and you really feel like, wow, like I knew where I was going, right? I knew what my behavioral statement was. I understood the world as it was, and I understand how I'm influencing that world to make it different. That's a really powerful feeling for a lot of people. And so, there's been lots of great successes. One of my favorites from the employment space is, my first startup was in the personal finance space. And one of the things that came out of it was we had a lot of data that showed us how real the gender wage gap was, how real it is worldwide that women are paid less than men for the same work. And so, if you think about an employment focused thing, we want women to ask for and get raises. We want them to close the gender wage gap because we want them to get paid, right, appropriately and reasonably. And so we knew what behavioral statement we want, right? When women want to be paid fairly, they will ask for and get a raise. Very clear behavioral statement. Women, you can actually help me here. We can replicate our research, the insights phase, right? Monish, you said you wanted an example. We can replicate our insights phase right here. Everybody know where that little raise your hand button is down there? Women, raise your hand if you don't want to be paid fairly. So if you don't want to be paid as much as your male identifying counterparts, I want you to just hit that little raise hand button. No, nobody wants to be paid unfairly. Okay, well then it's probably not a promoting pressure problem, right? And you're like, of course it's not a promoting pressure problem, Matt. Nobody wants to be underpaid. But if you think about some of the top books in the world, Lean In, right? Or like much of the way that feminism is pitched, it's all about women wanting it more, as if the problem was somehow that they didn't want it enough. The problem is inhibiting pressures, right? We know that it's hard to ask for a raise, right? You can feel nervous about it. You can feel like you're not going to get one. You don't know, how to do it. You've never done it before. Strong inhibiting pressures. So we need to design against those inhibiting pressures. So we tried something very simple. We just went on social media and I said, if you think you're underpaid, I will coach you through getting a raise, right? I'll set up one-on-one time with you. We'll look at your data together. I'll help you ask for a raise. And we did this until we had a really good understanding of why, of what made it easier to ask. So that we were really good at helping women do this. And then and only then did we build a tool. So what we ended up making was a little thing that would generate a letter, right? A script that you could use to ask your boss for a raise. It took about 10 minutes to get through. It took about a weekend to build. This letter generator helped women earn so far $4 billion in raises, $4 billion in raises, just by reducing those inhibiting pressures a little bit. So Manisha, I think, there's tons and tons of examples where in work situations, right, we've seen behavioral science be tremendously effective. And I think it's just about finding, within your own product, within your own company, what works for you, what goals do you care about, and how are you going to go about doing it? And with that, I have to go read James and the Giant Peach. Thank you, everybody, for spending some time with me. Thank you for the folks here in TalentSpotify for setting this up and inviting people. And hopefully this is something that you can use on your own. You can always follow up with me. I'm easy to get a hold of at Matt Wallaert on Twitter or matt@mattwallaert.com, or, I have open office hours if that's easier. Thank you all for spending, if you're in the Indian time zone, for spending a little morning time with me. I appreciate that. If you're in the American time zone, a little evening time with me. Either way, I appreciate you. I'll see you on down the road. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your time.
Of course. Bye, everybody.
And I just want to conclude that point, we are just have a TalentSpotify is a combination of data science plus behavior science. We are just combined together as a first time in a platform. So that's the reason we want to take in inputs from your side, your perspective in terms of a behavior science perspective. And thanks for your valuable inputs. And thank you, audience, for all your questions and engagement. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks,
See you
Anil.
again.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.